What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 170 on this Monday, April 28th, 2025. Josh Callaway, James E. Jackson, Tom Green with you on a Monday. Transfer portal is closed. We have some things we got to wrap up. Still a lot hanging out there when it comes to transfer portal. A lot to discuss, a lot to talk about, both the additions and the subtractions. What could be next? Could Oklahoma maybe add someone in that wide receiver room? We have several updates there, as well as kind of the other movement in the portal, both in and out. NFL draft, recap that a little bit, and we'll also do some basketball portal stuff, as well as the weekends on the diamond for softball and baseball. So a lot to get to on a Monday, our final show of April, and we got a lot going on as the transfer portal closes, but still a lot to discuss, a lot going on for the Sooners. We'll start there. I think, guys, before we get into what they've added and what could be next, let's go ahead and start with, we haven't really talked about the guys that have left to this point because there hasn't been anything too notable, really, for lack of a better term. But this one was pretty notable. Before the window closed, Gavin Sawchuk hopped in the portal. It just felt extremely inevitable that a running back was going to get in there after they added Jaden Ott. Obviously, had Sam Franklin, but still, it just felt like a logjam. Way too many guys. It was just kind of a matter of who. You didn't figure Torrey Blaylock, that's your freshman, was going to get in there, and you didn't figure that Xavier Robinson was going to get in there because of the year that he had, figures to be a big part of it. So it kind of felt like, would it be Tatum, Barnes, Sawchuk? Ends up being Sawchuk. Reaction here, guys. I mean, this is a guy who, at times was the best running back in Oklahoma's roster the last couple of years. But other times, you kind of just got lost in the shuffle also. I guess takeaways for you guys as Gavin Sawchuk's run as a Sooner came to an end over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came as a little bit of a surprise. Like, not that they lost a running back, because it was kind of inevitable once they added Jaden Ott. But when you take a step back after like the initial shock, because it came in right under the deadline, basically. It looked like they were going to get out of that spring window without really losing any considerable pieces. I know there was some smoke about Taylor Tatum and questions about Jaden Gibson, and those guys both wound up not entering the portal. But for Gavin Sawchuk to enter when he did over the weekend was a little bit of a surprise. But then you take a step back and it's like, he showed flashes at times, but he really has a very similar mold to what Jaden Ott brings to the table. Similar size, similar speed. Jaden Ott, I think, is obviously a better player right now. And I still think Gavin Sawchuk has a chance to be a really good player. Sure. But he just couldn't stay healthy throughout his 3+ seasons here at Oklahoma. And even though this spring, whenever we were out there for practices, he was always the first running back in the rotation. Mm-hmm. Then you get to the Crimson Combine, and we saw Xavier Robinson get some first-team reps. And again, this is all with Javonte Barnes limited too, so he's going to factor in there at some way.
Pre-Ott.
Yeah, pre-Ott. But like once you add Jaden Ott, like he is going to be your featured back. And then it's just about what you feel like you need around him to complement him. And then there's just so much overlap between what he can do and what Gavin Sawchuk can do that it makes sense that Gavin Sawchuk is sort of the odd man out looking for a fresh start.
Mm-hmm. I mean, initially, I just thought this shows you how fast things can change, for any player, on a team. This is a guy that, like 2 seasons ago, we were just talking about it, was leading Oklahoma in rushing yards. That way he ended that season after Tawee Walker was the main guy. And then Gavin Sawchuk just took the reins, 100 yards here, 100 yards there in the past couple of games. And the way he performed against Oklahoma State in the Alamo Bowl, it was like, this is going to be Oklahoma's running back, for the future. And he just got hurt. So, and it changed the trajectory of what he could do. I mean, he's a guy that we, thought was a speed back, and you can't do that with your hamstring always, banging up on your, different things like that on your legs. It changes a lot for your athletic ability and what you actually bring to a team. And so it's a tough situation because this is a guy that he looked to be so strong, just a couple of seasons ago. And maybe even we consider to be the top back on this team. And now he's, in the transfer portal. So it's just that type of situation for me and what my initial thoughts from what happened.
Yeah, weird OU career for Gavin. Just, some really high highs. I mean, he didn't, as a freshman, he never was on the field until the bowl game against Florida State that year, Brent Venables' first year, and he had over 100 yards in the bowl game. It was like, whoa. I mean, this is a guy who came in with some hype and, a lot of expectations. And, like James said, finished 2 seasons ago, I think of what he did against UCF and BYU, toward the end of that year. He was sensational. I mean, the end of the year, how many straight games was it over 100 yards? You remember, Tom? It was,
I think it was like
five or six. He was awesome down the stretch of the year, and you kind of felt like going to last year, Barnes and Sawchuk. This is your duo that they envisioned when they signed those guys a few years ago, and just kind of like a lot of things last year, health got in the way, and just totally a lost year for Gavin. And he made it through the winter. He went through the spring. You kind of thought maybe he's going to stick around and try to right the ship, but when they added Ott again, it just Barnes, Robinson, Tatum, like you can't play all these guys, and it makes sense for someone to hop in there, someone toward the top end of it, because I would imagine the market for Gavin will be pretty good. I would think another Power 5 team would be more than happy to scoop up Gavin and make him a part of their offense next year, because he's a really talented player. So we'll see where he winds up, but it just made sense. Somebody was going to go and end up being Gavin.
Yeah, and look, Gavin, like I said, really talented. Think he still has a chance to be a really good back. Up until the Armed Forces Bowl, every game that he had, at least 11 carries, I think he eclipsed 100 yards. But last year, I think he had one game of like 60-something yards and nothing more than like 20 or 25 yards, just because he couldn't stay on the field, didn't get enough touches. I know the running back rotation was, real janky throughout the year. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I guess he's the odd man out.
Oh, don't do that. Oh my goodness.
You were working on that one.
Oh my
god.
God.
Sitting on that, waiting for that one. He was though. He was. And even without Gavin, it's still a log jam. I mean, how are you going to get carries for all these guys? Tatum, Robinson. Mm-hmm. You just added Barnes if he's sticking around, I'm imagining that Barnes is envisioning a big role for him. It's going to be interesting. That's DeMarco Murray's problem to figure out, and it's a good problem to have. You want depth.
Yeah,
we shall see, because I can't fathom Xavier Robinson not being in the mix after what he did at the end of last year. But also, like I just said, Barnes is back. You just added. I mean, it's a log jam. It is, and it's something to talk about and figure out over the summer.
The thing with Barnes is I think he's still the best pass rusher. I mean, pass blocker on the team. And so you look at those situations for him, and I think that's going to work out for him. Xavier Robinson may be like the short yardage back. I'm just trying to spitball some ideas, just like.
I mean, Jaden Ott was really efficient down in the goal line when he was healthy.
He's the best all-around running back.
Yeah, he's the best all-around. Yeah. I think him and Taylor Tatum are probably the two best pass catchers in the group. Yeah. Like Jaden Ott, he's the total package. Like if he's healthy, he's one of the better backs in the country. He's has great burst, top end speed, good pass catcher, can factor into special teams in the return game. He's a guy that could be a top 100 pick in the draft next year if he stays healthy, and probably well within that top 100.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the part you're talking about with depth. I mean, they got pieces that can be used in certain situations that we maybe have seen so far. So
but I also feel like we've said this the last couple of off seasons, and it's just kind of been a mess. But now you have a proven number one guy in Jaden Ott.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no doubt. I would imagine that was a big part of the sell for Ott to come aboard. So we'll see. It can be a fun position to watch in the fall and going into next year, just kind of how they figure that out. But Gavin Sawchuk moves on. We'll see where he winds up. Can't be in the SEC. We know that. He'd have to sit out a year, which he's not going to do. So we'll see where he winds up. I imagine Power 5 is in his future for Gavin. They did make an addition since the last show. We knew they needed to add a kicker, and they did it. Tate Sandell comes aboard from UTSA. He was the fourth guy they've added in this spring cycle with Ott, Michaela, and then, of course, Ricky Lolohea, who we talked about a little bit last week as well. They missed on a Mason Shipley, the Texas State kicker. That was kind of felt like something that was going to happen. And then Texas ended up swooping in and getting him. I asked Colin about the kicker spot on Thursday. The first name he brought up was Tate Sandell as a possibility. Felt pretty confident that he was going to make this happen, and they did. They signed him over the weekend. Decent numbers, probably not quite as impressive as what Shipley had done in terms of the long distance makes. Shipley's had a big he made a 60-yarder, I think it was last year, but still really solid from 39 yards in, less than 49 in, and he only missed one last year. He had missed 4 kicks, 3 of them for over 50. So, reasonable distance, he's really good, right? From big distance, it's a little hit or miss, but they needed a kicker. The kicking game was not good in the spring. The Crimson Combine, we talked about, it was really bad. That was just one day, but it was awful. Brent Venables said himself, we need help. And they went and they got some help here. So Tate Sandell comes aboard, probably the favorite, I would imagine, to be your starting kicker.
Yeah, he's an all-conference caliber kicker last year. I think it was honorable mention in his conference at UTSA. 83% clip for the year, along a 54, which was a school record. I mean, it's a guy who's gone out there and proven it, which is, better than you can say about some of these other guys that they have right there. Sure. And it wasn't just the Crimson Combine where it was a struggle. Like when we were out there in the spring, like those guys were hit and miss. It was weird to look at times like, Grayson Miller, the walk-on from UCO, was the most efficient guy. And there are other times where like, okay, you see this from Austin Welch or you see this from Liam Evans, but just none of them were really consistent. And, we've seen how that could plague Oklahoma on special teams the last couple of years. So to get somebody who, you feel like can kind of solidify that spot and make you feel a little bit more confident about it. Because again, special teams is just so key. They were much improved last year overall with Doug Deacon. So if they can just, find a guy who can kind of settle that kicker spot, they'll feel a little bit more confident about that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 19 to 23 is what I noticed. I mean, that's a pretty good. It's a pretty good resume for him coming in. And I know that's, OU needs that because of what we've seen in the last couple of years, as Tom just said. I mean, and we saw in the combine, Austin Welch, Liam Evans, Grayson Miller, they just struggled there. So I initially saw that and was like, yeah, they need to get a kicker. I mean, I think I've said it a couple of weeks now. And so it's a good pickup in terms of that. They were actually able to get somebody that has a solid resume. And, and we look at kickers, it's not like when you bring a guy from a lower tiered team, so to speak, that, it changes a lot of what they do. Kickers really just, you do the same thing. Maybe it's just more mentally, like you shut out more of the crowd. And so that's a good thing that they can work on with him. So I think it's a good pickup overall.
I do too. I will say, just to be devil's advocate a little bit, like I said, I think Tate's probably your favorite to be the kicker. Very rare in college football. He came from somewhere that plays in a dome. Not a lot of schools playing domes in college football. I think of two is all I can think of right off: Syracuse and UTSA. Unless you loop in like Idaho. I don't think they're FBS right now. Or are they? I don't know. The teams come and go all the time. Oklahoma Wind, a little different than being in the dome at the Alamo Dome.
That's true.
Remember that when we get to the season. I'm not just devil's advocate there, just worth mentioning. Elsewhere, as far as what could be next in the portal, obviously the portal is closed, but they're not done, or at least they hope to not be done. They're still courting a number of wide receivers here. The priority is Jermichael Carter from McNeese, who, Colin and I talked about on the Thursday show last week. He has since visited Norman. Visit went well. Tennessee is the main competition here. It would seem for Carter. Vanderbilt's also in the mix. They also have a couple, I hate to say backup options. That kind of puts a little bit of a bad connotation, but there are other places to go if they don't get Carter. They've offered Hawaii wideout Dekel Crotis. Hope I didn't just completely butcher his name. They also have Jackson State wideout Isaiah Spencer, who they've been in contact with as well. So it seems pretty likely that they'll add someone here. How important is it that they do for you guys? We'll just kind of round your temperature check on wide receiver in general. I mean, they're chasing a couple of guys here. Jermichael Carter seems to be the priority. If not him, maybe one of these other guys. Just kind of your read of the entire situation with kind of the wideout room and the emphasis that should be put on making sure they can lock down one of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting at least an insurance policy basically at wide receiver is something that they could use. Just because outside of Deion Burks, they don't have a lot of proven healthy production right now. You hope that you can get Javonte Gibson back early in the season. We'll see where Jaden Gibson's at come fall, and whether he has a chance to play this year or not. If those two guys can get healthy, you feel better about the room. But I mean, outside of Deion Burks, it's like Isaiah Satenya had a really good spring. But him and Deion, they're both very similar skill sets. They both primarily play in the slot, but they can both play outside. So you can get them on the field at the same time. And then after that, you have, Elijah Thomas, who looked really good as a freshman, coming in as a freshman. You have Manny Choice coming in as a freshman. Keontae Lewis, we'll see where he's at come the fall. It's just, you have a lot of question marks there. And if you can get someone who you feel can fit Ben Arbuckle's system, and, give you another field stretching option, I think that you should go out in there and try to get him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's if you can get him. That's what I see at this point. Because if like Brent Venables said, if they can get Javonte Gibson back at the start of camp and somewhere around that timeline, they're still in a good situation at wide receiver. Now I know there's some unproven guys, but I think like you guys were saying, Elijah Thomas is one of those guys that can really, show himself really, really well in his freshman season. So that's where I see it. Isaiah Satanga, I think, as you mentioned, a guy that can stretch the field. That's a guy that can do it. They just got to have their opportunities, and we would have more. We would know more about this wide receiver unit if we had an actual spring game. We could, we would have a better analysis. But just based on what we saw, that's what I think. I mean, the group is still really good overall. And so, do they need a guy? I'm not entirely sure, but if they could get him, yes, you should, because like Tom said, it could be an insurance, piece for you all.
Yeah, I like Jermichael Carter. 6'4". The only guys that have with size like that are Jaden Gibson, who knows where he is, Ivan Carrion, who had a nice bowl game, but otherwise hasn't played a lot, and then Manny Joyce, who's a true freshman. Those are the only guys that have size like that. You like your slot guys, Deion Burks and Satania, like you guys just said, but more on the outside, wouldn't hate it. And Jermichael Carter's a guy who had a pretty nice year at McNeese, good size, just a good athlete. That seems like a pretty nice partnership if you can make it happen. It's going to be tough to beat Tennessee head-to-head. We kind of mentioned this last week with Colin. Tennessee just had a lot of money just come loose with Nico moving on. So they kind of have money to spend right now. So it's going to be a tough battle to win head-to-head for Jermichael Carter. But you had him visit. Tennessee's still in the mix there. We'll see how it shakes out. And I would like another guy in this room because I just, not that I love Giovanni Gibson. I love talking to him. I thought he was going to be a huge part of this team. I still do. But, the injury makes me nervous, especially after last year. And, Brent Bell was talking about him being back for the start of the season. I hate to say I'm skeptical because that, it implies like I'm not rooting for his health or something. But he, I wouldn't bank on that. I guess I'll put it that way. So we'll see. Still coordinating a few guys. Colin's been all over it. Great updates constantly coming into Sooners Illustrated. So we'll keep an eye on it. But I would imagine it's pretty likely that they add one of these guys.
Yeah. I'm just under the impression that what happened last year is an anomaly. It has to be, right? Like it can't be a situation where all those receivers get hurt again. Because then it's like there's something internally that's going on, at the program. It's like it can't be the case. Like that's the way I see it. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was gonna say like on the Giovanni Gibson like timeline, I'm kind of in the same camp as Josh. Like I'd be very skeptical about him being ready to go like week one. I kind of like it. They're completely different injuries, but like I liken it to what we saw with Troy Everett last year, where he went down, similar time frame in spring practice, and the hope initially was get him back for the start of the season, and we saw him back on the practice field before the season started, but it took him a month or so to really gear up and get going. So, I'm no doctor, I'm no medical expert, but I would think that probably the best case scenario is, yes, you get him cleared to return to practice in fall camp, but you still have to ramp him up. And I think it would take a few weeks at least to get him there. But I mean, we'll see. If it was similar to Kendall Dolby's injury, like that happened, early September, and he was back practicing.
Right?
Yeah. So early, mid September, and he was back practicing. Although they held him back from some of the contact stuff, but he was back practicing in March. I mean, I think that gives you a little bit of optimism that you will get Giovanni Gibson back at some point early in the season. It's just a matter of when you feel like he's fully there, because he has to. With injuries like that, you have to get the trust back after a broken bone, and that's tough. It takes some time. There's mental hurdles too, not just the physical stuff. But I'm interested to see what happens. Like Josh said, I think Jermichael Carter can be a good piece. He brings you that good length. The kid from Hawaii started his career at Kentucky. Former 4-star recruit, so that that there's a base level of talent there. He's a little bit, he's 5'11", so he's one of the smaller, so to speak, receivers. And then the kid from Jackson State, he's another one of those field stretching types. I think he led Jackson State in yards per catch last season. He's 6'2", 185, 190 pounds. So he's got some good size to him too. So I think those aren't terrible fallback plans, but the goal right now is, you try to get Jermichael Carter on board.
Sure. And we're, expecting movement there pretty soon. He was supposed to have visited Tennessee already, had a personal matter come up that pushed that back. So they may have adjusted his timeline. Remains to be seen. But even, it's about 12:30 right now on Monday. could be movement for it. I mean, it's kind of one of those things with the portal. This all could change pretty quick, but expecting some movement there soon. And again, Colin's been all over it. Updates on the website. Subscribe to Oklahoma.247sports.com. Another position of need. Go ahead.
Would you guys be disappointed if they didn't based on what you're all saying? Would you be disappointed if they didn't get a receiver? Like, would that seem like a letdown? For what's this season?
I mean, they need one in my opinion.
It'd be a disappointment.
I think they need one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think you need as many bodies as you can, and like while you believe you have some talented freshmen and guys who didn't really contribute last year, if you can get a guy who has proven some production at the college level, I think you need to go out there and do what you can to fortify that room, because you can't have a situation where, like last year, where your top 5 guys all get hurt, and then you're just relying on inexperienced potential.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt. Another position on offense that felt like a major need and felt like a guarantee that they would add, and now I don't know, is tight end. So Lance Mason, we talked about a few times, visited last week. He then visited Wisconsin, and Wisconsin got him. So Lance Mason not aboard. We talked about Colin on Thursday. It felt like all their eggs were in the Lance Mason basket, and they did not get him. You never know. The window's closed, so maybe something can still be worked out. But it feels like the tight end room probably is about what it is. I don't know, guys. This was, it felt like, again, not that Lance Mason was a slam dunk. This guy's going to be awesome. He's coming from Missouri State. It's still a big jump, but he was far more productive than kind of what the rest of the room has been, at least previously in their careers. And it felt like Oklahoma was in good shape. They had a good visit, but then Wisconsin, they got it done. They had the last lap. They had the last word, and they made it happen. I don't know. Where are you guys at this tight end room? It's, another gut punch to this room. It felt like, okay, you're going to make another nice addition here, and then that doesn't happen. It just kind of seems like it just is one thing after another for this position for years now.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably just going to have to make do with what you have. They have some interesting pieces. They just don't. I don't think they had like a standout guy there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Ben Arbuckle, after the Crimson Combine, when he spoke to us, he said that tight end from day one of camp to the Crimson Combine was the most improved position on the offense. Mm-hmm. So there is progress there. And, you have some intriguing pieces. Will Huggins, big dude, big target. They clearly tried to emphasize him later in the spring, at least. Carson Kent, by all accounts, really good pass catcher. Jaron Kanik, still kind of that wild card, I think, in that position. And then, Caden Helms and Cade McIntyre, guys that just need to stay healthy to see if they can get on the field and contribute in a meaningful manner. But you're just going to have to kind of make do with what you have, I think. I don't think any of us expected the position to kind of, be a stalwart part of the offense, even if they were to land a transfer. They just need to be better than they were last year. And I know it was kind of a mixed bag last year because on one hand, Bauer Sharp did lead you in receiving, but on the other hand, there was, all the other, issues with blocking and, just everything else that went with the struggles of that position. So I still think that's going to be the weak link of this offense. You just need it to not be a link that's going to kind of break the chain.
Yeah, doesn't need to be a disaster. That's pretty much what it is. And so we're going to see the development that these guys have made, over the course of this past camp, and we'll see what happens with them. I mean, that's basically where I'm at with it, because we seem to talk about this group every single podcast because it's always something. It's always a letdown, seems like, for what's going on with them. If it wasn't Devon Mitchell, if it wasn't other things like that, it's just like they have to win. They have to start winning at some point. And so let's see what this development that they've been talking about. Let's see if it is going to play out in the season. That's pretty much where I'm at on this tight end room now.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It felt like this was going to be a nice pickup, and it felt like things were in a good place, and it didn't happen. And we'll see. We'll move forward with what they have, and we'll take a look at it in fall camp. And I don't know. It remains, it's a point of contention until proven otherwise. Pretty much right now with that tight end room.
Yeah.
Before we get over to some basketball, did want to wrap up. NFL draft was over the weekend. Had 2 guys get drafted. Danny Stutsman and Billy Bowman both went in the 4th round. Danny to the New Orleans Saints. Billy to the Atlanta Falcons, my team. So I was pretty fired up about that. A laundry list of guys have since signed either as undrafted free agents or like they got at least a mini camp invite. A bunch of guys. Ethan Downs signed with the Jaguars, was kind of the headliner there. Kind of thought Ethan was going to get drafted, truthfully. Not that I'm super dialed into the draft, but it kind of felt like there was a belief that Downs would be selected. So kind of surprising he wasn't. Obviously got signed. So hopefully he can, work his way into making the most of it. We know obviously that guy's work ethic and all that good stuff. Anything that stuck out to you guys though from either Danny and Billy where they landed or just kind of the draft as a whole from Oklahoma's perspective? I mean, only 2 guys is really low for OU. They had one of the longest streaks of 3 guys at least getting drafted, and that's obviously gone now. That's after the streak of 4 guys was last year. So I don't know. But Danny and Billy, obviously good luck to them, and I think we all think they're going to be good NFL players.
Yeah, you kind of alluded to that streak. 2002 was the last time they had fewer than 3 players drafted, and coincidentally, it was a safety and a linebacker in Roy Williams and Rocky Galmas. And now you got Danny and Billy. So look, it was a down year overall. I would expect that to not be the case next year. It's early and a lot can change in the next year. Sure. But you just look at the draft eligible guys on this roster, and some of these early mock drafts or big boards, and it's like R. Mason Thomas is a potential first rounder. Deion Burks is a guy that if he can stay healthy and put together the kind of season that he did at Purdue, is a first round talent. Jaden Ott is day 1, day 2 type player, and then a bunch of other pieces around them too that have a chance to kind of take that step forward over the course of the next year. So I suspect that they'll be in the 5, 6, maybe even 7 range this time next year, because look, they've had a chance to restock talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I know 2 of the guys that I mentioned before were offensive guys, but those are impact transfers that you bring in. So I think the talent level, across the board on this team is on an upward trajectory from, I guess, where it was in terms of draftable guys the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, who knows what would have happened if these 2 guys that actually left last year, before this past season, where Oklahoma would have been in the NFL draft this season. It just seems like it didn't go well. Ethan Downs is a little surprising just because I can't imagine he didn't pass like the intangible or the interview type of situations. Now, he went to the combine. He was invited there. He had a good showcase there. And so it's just a little confusing on maybe him not getting drafted. It's one of those situations for me because it's a guy I think a lot of organizations would want. Now, obviously, he did get picked up. It's not like he just didn't make the team, but it was a little surprising that he didn't get drafted. And so that's just where I see it.
I was going to say, here's the thing. Once you get to the 6th and 7th round, it's almost better to go undrafted because you kind of get a better fit just from talking to teams.
Well, you can start picking your own at that point.
You get a better sense of where you kind of stand with them as opposed to some of these late round flyers. So I think Ethan still has a chance to make a roster. Obviously, he was a steady presence off the edge for Oklahoma. He's got some versatility to be able to play kind of along the line, can stand up, can play with his hand in the dirt. Obviously, put up some impressive numbers at the combine. I think he led all defensive linemen in bench press, or was close to the top. Certainly led all defensive ends. But I mean, he's a athletic specimen. He's a solid player. Obviously, a really good character guy that I think that is going to have a chance to contribute in some way for Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fully acknowledging that I said the same thing last year because I did. It would have been way more if they didn't convince some of these guys to come back. R. Mason Thomas and Deion Burks in particular. Those are guys that could have left and would have got drafted this year that, obviously they convinced to come back. You'd rather them come back than add to your draft pick total, obviously. But still, it is a little alarming. It's a low number, lowest in, like Tom said, over 20 years. But next year, to Tom's point, I agree. I mean, I look at the list of guys here. I mean, like you said, R. Mason Thomas, Deion Burks, Kip Lewis probably. I think Robert Spears-Jennings could be a guy that gets drafted. I think Gentry Williams, if he can be healthy.
If he stays healthy.
For sure. He's healthy.
But he's a guy who could get drafted. Certainly Jay Nott, I agree there. Maybe some of these offensive linemen, who knows? I mean, Bill Beamer puts guys in the league all the time, So
John Mateer,
yeah. I mean, if Mateer has a good year, you best believe he's going to get drafted. I mean, look at the quarterbacks who got drafted yesterday. It's insane.
I mean, it's a stacked quarterback class next year. It's going to be very crowded, but the kind of production that he's done. And obviously, Ben Arbuckle had a hand in, developing Cam Ward into a number one pick.
He was there, which is cool. Ben was there at the draft for Cam to get taken number one. So, yeah, I mean, we'll, there's a chance that it's a pretty high number next year if all goes well. And if it's not, that probably means the season didn't go very well. So we'll see. We'll reevaluate in a year. But, yeah, good luck to Danny and Billy. I love that they're on, rival teams. That's kind of fun. I really think, and I'm going to sound like a major homer because I am a Falcons fan, but I think it's a great fit for him. He plays just like Jesse Bates, and obviously he can kind of learn from him. And they made a lot of like defensive young guy signings. That's kind of just a good. I feel like it's a good spot for him. I really do. Danny with the Saints, that's an organization that's kind of just, I don't know what's going on there. So good luck to him. I'm obviously really pulling for Danny. That there are better places he could have landed him, in my opinion, but we'll see. Reevaluate in a year as well. So good luck to those guys, though, and all the guys who got signed. Dejon Terry, Trace Ford, Luke Elzinga, even Spencer Brown got picked up. I mean, it's a long
Tarquin got picked up too.
Tarquin. So it's a long list of guys, and Jake Roberts. So I mean, it's a lot of guys. So rooting for all of them. You never know.
Dylan Gabriel.
It's good for Dylan Gabriel. Good for Dylan Gabriel because
but also like the Browns have treated him like dirt already. He hasn't even really got there, and it's just been one Shadur post after another. It's like I kind of feel bad for him. Truthfully, you got the third round money. You're not going to apologize for the money, but the path to actually being on that roster when the season gets here, I don't see how that's going to happen. But
but still, big picture. Like you look at where he was going into even the 2023 season. Exactly. Everybody's like he's an undraftable guy, maybe a seventh rounder, and stays in college another 2 years, and works his way up into the third round. Like that's good. No,
EG third round, and Quinn, you were seventh round. I don't know how many people would have guessed that 2 years ago, or even a year ago. But we'll see how it shakes out for him. That Browns QB room is hilarious. So we'll see. We'll see what happens for DG moving forward. Should we do a little bit of basketball before we get to the Diamond Sports? This is kind of old news, but we hadn't talked about it yet because it happened on Monday last week. They officially got Xavier Brown from St. Joe's. Porter Moser, this is a heck of a class. And there's another big fish hanging out there with Darion Reed from Alabama, who, Tom, you can speak on if you'd like. A former five-star that Oklahoma's trying to add. But Xavier Brown is another top 40 portal guy to go with Tay Davis, with Nigel Pack. This is a really good portal class that they're putting together here. And Xavier Brown is right up there. I mean, again, the backcourt is in great shape. If you can make another big man addition maybe here, or, Darion Reed's kind of a wing. He's a forward. He's 6'8", whatever it is, whatever he's listed at. This is a good portal class, though. I mean, another big pickup here with Brown. Yeah,
I mean, they got 3 top 65 portal guys.
And in good shape for another, potentially.
Yeah, potentially in good shape to get Darion Reed, a former 5-star guy who was really just hampered by injuries last year at Alabama, but showed some flashes of why he was a 5-star coming out of high school. We'll see what happens with him. Seems like NC State was the other team in discussion. They've kind of faded to the background as they've added some other pieces through the portal. Heard there might be a couple other teams floating out there for Darion Reed, but I think Oklahoma feels pretty good about where they're at as of this recording. But Xavier Brown is a huge addition because while Nigel Pack is a smaller guard, I think he's at his best when he plays off the ball. And bringing in Xavier Brown, and you can pair those two together, where Xavier Brown is more of your facilitator and still a guy that can score 20 points a game, but as the guy initiating the offense, where giving Nigel Pack a chance to play off ball, spot up as a shooter, I think that is a really good 1-2 punch in the backcourt, especially as you're trying to replace a lottery pick and Jeremiah Fears and another guy started every game for you in Duke Miles. Like I think that is a very, very dynamic and backcourt that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And we talked about Tay Davis and the athleticism that he brings. So if you can bring a little bit more length to that front court, Darion Reed again doesn't really address your size part.
Sure.
But he's a athletic wing who could play the 3, can play the 4. And I know they're supposed to be hosting another 6'9", small ball 5 power forward type, Stephon Payne from Jacksonville, who's just another guy that could bring a little bit more size to that front court. But I think based on how aggressive or not aggressive they've been with trying to get a big man in there. Tells you a lot about how they feel about Kai Rogers coming in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but between Mo Waggy and Kai Rogers, I think they feel pretty good about that 4 or 5 spot. So we'll see. We'll see how the roster kind of rounds out. You feel like they're going to add 1, maybe 2 more pieces. I don't know if they're going to get to the full 15 scholarship spots, or they're going to make some of these walk-ons into scholarship players, because who plays more than 9 or 10 deep scholarship wise anyways, right, on a regular basis. So at this point, you're just kind of rounding things out and filling some holes and some gaps in there to make you feel a little bit better about this roster top to bottom.
Listen, I think it should be a shout out to Trae Young. Maybe, I don't know if all of this just has a lot to do with him, but since the time that he announced himself as the assistant general manager, I mean, it's just been rolling, and I guess that kind of goes with Porter Moser getting the team to the tournament. Yeah, it kind of helps build that momentum. But all these guys that have signed, and now the guys that they're picking up, it's like these are the guys that's exactly what you need, because they all can score the ball so well. I mean, 3 of the 4 scored over 15 points, right, from the last from the past schools, and so it's a really good spot for them. And I'm really excited about what this team could bring next year, just based on what we've seen so far. And you look at the additions that they can go after as well. I think it's a pretty good situation for Oklahoma to be in. So I'm pretty excited about this, basketball all around in Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a great offseason. And, I've applauded Oklahoma's investment in the program here. And, they've gotten serious about being good at hoops this offseason. Mm-hmm. It's been a heck of a portal class. They're still chasing some more names, but it's fair to be excited about where the team is. And I think the fans are excited. And, it's a big year for Porter. So we talked about his, last year was a big year, and he finally got over that hump to get to the tournament. But it's not like that pressure just goes away. I mean, they need to win. They need to get back to the tournament again, and they need to probably win in the tournament. I mean, it's been a while since Oklahoma has done anything in the tournament. So it's a big year, and they have a great roster on paper. Tom, acknowledging that they're not done. They still have 4 open spots. Do you want to take a quick stab at the lineup? Because you might guess. I mean, Nigel Pack's going to start, I presume.
Yeah, I think Xzayvier Brown is your starting point guard. Nigel Pack is probably your 2 guard. And they can both.
Moagi at the 5.
I think Moagi is probably your starting 5, and then those 3-4 spots are interesting, because I think right now Tay Davis is probably one of your starters. If you get Darion Reed, I would assume he's probably going to start at one of the spots. Sure. Maybe you start Tay at the 4 and Darion Reed at the 3. But then it's like, what about Jeff Nwanko and Jadon Jones, guys who probably were going to be competing for starting jobs. So I think those kind of 3 and 4 spots are really interchangeable right now. But I think that's your, those 7 plus Dayton Forsyth right now would be your, core 8. Kai Rogers is your backup big. And still, I mean, what happens with Alec Blair? I know he's also a baseball prospect, but they're pretty confident that he's going to get to campus. We'll see how that shakes out with the draft in June. And Andreas Holst, kind of a wild card there, I think, just because international prospect, not as much known about him, but he's basically a 7-footer who can knock down threes. We'll see how they kind of use him, or they try to redshirt him this first year. But it's. I think at this point, like you feel good about your top 8 or 9 guys that you have there. And if you can get Darion Reed or, Stephon Payne to kind of round out that rotation, you feel pretty good. But yeah, that 3 and 4 spot, question marks for me in terms of like who's going to start. But I think just based on, what you're bringing in, I think Tay Davis is going to start at one of those, and it might be down to Jeff Nwanko and Jadon Jones for the other spot, or those are your top 2 guys off the bench. We'll see.
For sure. Yeah. In 24/7 Sports, we had our final 150, portal, and you had 3 OU guys in the top 60 or 65. I can't remember where Tay Davis landed. And you didn't have anyone going out in the top 150, unlike what a year ago, with Milo Suzan, Otega Owa. So it's kind of like, okay, this is more what you need. Big time talent coming in, not big time talent going out, so been a good offseason. Portal Moser's been in effect. We'll see what else they can do. Like I said, got a few more spots to play around with here. We'll see how they kind of round it out. But even as it stands right now, with no more additions, you're feeling pretty good. So nice little portal class put together here, and fair to be excited.
Yeah, I think the portal class ranks 12th or 13th. So it's somewhere in the top 10 to 15.
All day.
overall. But based on average, like signing, they're like top 6, top 7. So it's a smaller class right now, but it's a very strong class, which is what you want.
No doubt, been a great offseason so far for Portal Moser, coming off of the tournament, making the tournament for the first time. So Trae Young, it's been just a good offseason, good vibes right now, which is very unlike this time last year, frankly. Tom, I think we'll let you go. James and I will wrap up with a little bit of Diamond Sports. Big weekends for both. Obviously, softball, the big sweep over Texas. So we'll break that down a little bit. Tom, see you later. Let's catch up with you next time.
All right, later.
All right, we now shift into the Diamond Sports portion of the program. James covers softball. I cover baseball. We'll start with softball. James, massive weekend, final home weekend of the regular season. It was a huge series, top 5 matchup. All 3 games were supposed to be on national TV. The middle game got moved back because of weather. But just all the eyes were on Love's Field this weekend in the softball world, and OU swept Texas. And they're back to number 1 in the fresh rankings today, which, I kind of joked about it yesterday on Twitter a little bit, like, OU should be number 1. Until proven otherwise, OU should be number 1. And they are for the first time this year. What a weekend. I mean, every game was kind of weird because it seemed like OU jumped out to huge leads and they let Texas get back in it all weekend. But at the end of the day, they won all 3 games. Is it a perfect team? Are they as dominant as they've been? Obviously not. No. There are pitching questions. But at the end of the day, when you're sweeping teams as good as Texas, it's almost like maybe it doesn't matter that they're not as good as they usually are. Maybe they're still just a juggernaut. You were there all weekend. I guess the big takeaways for you, I mean, what a series. I mean, just another massive statement from Patty Gasso. And I mean, OU owns Texas right now in softball. I mean, I don't know how you could even argue otherwise.
Well, that's kind of what I was mentioning on the last time we talked. Or it's not a lot of, there's not a juggernaut type of team. There are a bunch of elite teams and some great teams. Sure. And that's where it's at right now. And like I said, anybody can be beat on any given day. And it just seems like Oklahoma was more prepared for Texas than Texas was prepared for Oklahoma. And that's what it came down to. Tegan Kavan is the pitcher that everybody knows Texas uses a lot. She's the one they use last year in the World Series, last year in the Big 12 championship. So Oklahoma has found a way to get really, really used to what she does. And the Sooners knocked her out of the game, 2 different games. It was just, they shut her down. I mean, like she couldn't do anything with Oklahoma's offense. And a lot of the runs that Oklahoma scored or played it was because of what, they did against Tegan Kavan. And so that was the really bright side of the series. And so when they had, a freshman pitcher come in, Texas had a freshman pitcher come in, OU's offense kind of, didn't produce as much. And that's where you saw them lose that 8-0, game 3 lead that they almost lost, is when the freshman pitcher came in, a pitcher that they haven't seen. And that was the issue for them. So it just showed that the preparation for Oklahoma, the coaching staff, is still, on a better trajectory than what Texas is right now. And I think that was the biggest difference in this series. And then you have it to where you get your players ready for this series. Now, Patty Gasso talked about it when they lost the Alabama series. She felt like she didn't let the team know enough about how big of a rival Alabama is, how big of a series this is. You don't have to do that with Texas. All the Oklahoma players know this is a big series. You need to show up. And you saw that with Alana Aguayani, with the defensive plays that she made, with the grand slam that she had in game 1, which is just incredible. Only her second home run of the season. I mean, you saw it with Gabby Garcia, who's now tied with Nelly Marinez with 14 home runs this season. She continues to be a shortstop like that. It's just like of Grace Lyons type of level. She's looked that good throughout the entire season, even as a freshman. I mean, you saw a bunch of different players. And, Ella Parker finally getting her home run swing back. I mean, it was a drought for her for much of the season as she's dealt with, her injuries, hit 2 home runs in this series. And so it was just a really, really good outing overall for the team. And they were just more prepared. And then you have, the Love's Fields crowd on your side. It was a record-setting crowd in game 3, record-setting crowd throughout the series, over 12,000 throughout the series. So it was just incredible all around. I mean, everything went well for OU besides, them giving up the leads a couple of times, but able to get the fight to, come back and win those games. It was just incredible for them. I mean, you saw a championship level team this weekend, I think, from what I've seen. So it was fun stuff.
No doubt. In classic, Patty Gasso, OU softball fashion, feels like they're playing their best right now. It's about to shift into May. which is winning time around here for that program. This is where they start to dominate. It's where they go like this and they just keep on climbing. And here they go. I mean, again, are they perfect? Do they have weaknesses? Maybe where it felt like some of these past teams just didn't have one. They have weaknesses, but again, does it really matter if you're still winning? You're sweeping teams that are in the top 5 like Texas is. What a weekend. I mean, a massive statement, final regular season weekend. They're going to win the SEC. It looks like. I don't think they've clinched it just yet, but they're close. They go to Florida to end the regular season. Then got SEC tournament, and then you start the big dance after that. I mean, heck of a weekend, because it just felt like, this was, if Texas was going to get them, this was probably the year to get them, or maybe an opportunity. And, to sweep this thing is a heck of a statement, and very deserved to get back to that number 1 ranking. It's crazy they haven't been ranked number 1 all year, which is, it's nuts to get this late and they haven't been number 1. But
what do you mean by that? They were number 1. Depends on what poll. Depends on what poll you were looking at. They were number 1 in the softball ESPN poll for a couple of weeks.
I thought I saw that this was the first time they've been number 1 this season.
There's some other publications that refused to put.
There's like 90 polls. So.
Yeah, there was a publication that refused to put Oklahoma at number 1. Had Texas number 1 for a majority of the season, and Oklahoma fans let them know about it plenty of times throughout the year.
They should have been number 1. They should have been number 1 a long time ago.
They should have been number 1 until they were knocked out. But I will say, Patty Gasso said she was surprised that they were even in this. With all the new faces they had this year, a new pitching staff, a new captain, a freshman captain, having Ella Parker be, play most of the season hurt. She was surprised that they were in this situation. And it just goes to show, pretty much what the coaching job that they've done this year and how they've been able to motivate their players to get to this point. And so it's just been awesome for them throughout the season. So, I mean, it's a really good run. This is their 4th sweep in the SEC. And, you talk about a lot of what, the SEC brings. They swept the team 4 times, so it's just a really good situation. Like I said, the series they lost, maybe they weren't motivated enough against Alabama. Maybe the crowd got to them, the opposing crowd. Against Tennessee, it was just, like I said, Caroline Pick is just that type of pitcher where if she comes in, it's just like the ultimate trump card. So when they play just, teams that they've known and prepared for, it's a good sign for them. And I think they're going to give themselves the opportunity to host a regional and super regional. Like going into the series, it was like a question. They were on the bubble. They were ranked number 12 in RPI rankings. Now they're ranked number 3 in RPI rankings, just based on this past series. So if they just get 1 against Florida, I think they win the SEC, and I think they're going to be hosting no matter what. So that's the good sign from this weekend. They're putting themselves in great position to have the advantages going into the postseason.
Right. In good shape, obviously. They'll finish, like I said, in Florida, SEC tournament, and then the NCAA tournament after that. It's kind of crazy with that time of year, but it's about to shift into May. And so we get into the postseason. May, very underrated sports month. But the postseasons for softball and baseball, it's great. It's fantastic. So exciting times, fun times coming up here in the very near future. Like I said, they go to Gainesville this weekend to close out the regular season. Over on the baseball side, I don't really have a ton to add or to break down here. They went out to Georgia, top 10 team in Athens. It was a really competitive series. All 3 of these games were close. Georgia ended up winning after Oklahoma won the opener on Thursday. Georgia won 10-9 on Friday and then won 6-3 on Saturday. So, a disappointing series loss. Just because you won the first game, it's certainly a forgivable loss. I mean, you lose to a top 10 team on the road. They did tumble in the rankings a little bit, which is a little surprising, 14 down to 21. But that's a big fall. It doesn't mean much. It doesn't mean much. We talked about it a little bit last week. Oklahoma, they wouldn't host if the season ended right now. They still can get there. They're going to need to play well, though. You got 3 weekends left. You got Ole Miss at home this weekend. You go to Kentucky, and then Texas comes to Norman. Texas is number 1. So, I mean, you were talking about a chance to make a statement. There it is. I think they probably need to win all 3 of these series to get to that host line. But it's still out there to be done. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good weekend overall. I mean, Kyson Witherspoon continues to just be amazing. I'm out of words for him. He's unbelievable. He'll be a top 10 pick when the draft gets here in June. He is sensational, and everyone should enjoy him while he's still here. The rest of the rotation, Kate Crossland had one kind of blow up inning that kind of ruined his day. He otherwise pitched okay. Malachi Witherspoon was pitched pretty well, but they had a hard time getting the offense going. Really, the big news right now for OU, it was a weird weekend because the top of the lineup, which has been so unbelievably good, didn't have a good weekend. It kind of cost them. Trey Gamble, Jackson Willits, Easton Carmichael, those three guys have been they've carried the offense in a lot of ways, and they kind of all had cold weekends at one time, and it hurt them, especially on Saturday. They only scored 3 runs, lost a lot of guys on base, and Dayton Taki has been awesome. He had 2 homers on Thursday, hurts his ankle on Thursday night, sliding to second base. He's going to be out for a while, which is a tough blow because he's been an anchor there at first base all season, and he had really been hot. He literally hit 2 home runs in the game that he got hurt on Thursday. So that was a tough blow too. So offensively, I wouldn't say I'm worried, but you got some things to kind of figure out a little bit. Without Taki, a couple guys in little mini slumps right now. But again, overall, it's a really good team on the road. All 3 games were close. I don't have any big panic takeaways certainly from losing this series, but the margin for error to get to that host line it's really tight now with 3 weekends to go. So we'll see how they finish up. Big week with Ole Miss coming to town. Obviously a rematch of the College World Series finals of a few years ago. So that'll be exciting. I'm sure it'll be great crowds in Norman coming up this weekend. But yeah, a bit of a disappointing weekend just because after you won on Thursday, you're thinking we got 2 shots to get a huge series win, and they just weren't quite able to do it. Couldn't quite get the big hit late on Friday too. They were down 9-2 on Friday and got it back to a 1-run game and just couldn't quite get over that.
One more,
But they're a good team, but it's gonna take a really strong finish to get to that host line, unfortunately. But it's still there. It's still possible, but gonna have to play pretty darn well to get there.
Yep. It was like you said, it's a top 10 team against Georgia. So nothing too crazy to take away from this. Really good. It just showed a really good fight. Like you said, game 2, they almost had it. To come back from that deficit, shows the type of team you are. It's the same thing that happened with Texas, Oklahoma. Texas comes back, shows you why they're a really good team. And so that's why I kind of think like the fall that they had in the rankings seemed like a bit much. Now I don't have the full context of what the rest of the teams did, their resumes and things like that. But it's just when you think about it just like this, like, man, that's a crazy fall for them in that.
Yeah, no doubt.
What happened. So
no doubt. So we'll see what happens over the rest of the season. They have one final midweek game, their last midweek of the year is tomorrow. They got Wichita State coming to town. We'll see about weather, and it's kind of just rainy every day in Oklahoma right now. So we'll see. But then, Ole Miss at home, at Kentucky, then Texas at home to close out the regular season before SEC tournament, and then the dance, obviously moving into June. So every weekend kind of huge the rest of the way for that team. But a lot still to play for, certainly everything out in front of them as we move into May later this week. I think that's it. We'll get Colin in here on Thursday to wrap up some more portal stuff. Of course, anything left to kind of figure out and sift through, we'll do so with him on Thursday, maybe kind of wrap up this portal cycle for Oklahoma as we move into May. And of course, we'll be back, James, Tom, myself, next Monday, wrapping up the weekends for the Diamond Sports, all the latest movement in the portal, both basketball and football. We'll break it all down for you every Monday and Thursday, 3 o'clock on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts as well. I think that's it. Be sure again to subscribe, Oklahoma247sports.com, Sooners Illustrated, get all the latest recruiting information, portal, Diamond Sports, basketball. It's all there for you. Come hang out with us and our great community over Sooners Illustrated. For Tom Green earlier, James E. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway, signing off for now. We'll see you next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.